I'm Steve Massengale, grew up here in Lubbock and went to school at Monterey, graduate of Texas Tech. Started my small businesses here that I still have. I'm a retailer. I actually sell Texas Tech merchandise for one of my businesses and then own another business called Advanced Graphics. I got started really working in the community right out of college with some work with Texas Tech as they transitioned from the Southwest Conference to the Big 12, and so kind of cut my teeth there and learned a lot about working in the community. I've served on the school board for 8 years. Really, gained a great appreciation for public education during that time. And then since 2016, I've been on the city council for the past 8 years.
Okay, Mark McBrayer. I'm a longtime resident of Lubbock. I lived here since I was a kid, and my wife and I both grew up here. I went to school here. I went to Texas Tech. My kids, I went to Texas Tech. My daughter's a dentist here in town. My son and his wife are teachers, and my son and his wife have my 2 granddaughters. And so Lubbock is a lot of my past. It's also a big part of my future. And that's why I'm running for mayor, because I love Lubbock. I want it to be the great place for my grandchildren to grow up in. I'm a practicing attorney, but I'm not taking on any new clients. I'm working through the clients I've got. Hopefully be finished with all the business I have for them by the end of the year so that I can be committed full-time to being mayor of Lubbock. Oh, I think one of the things that has come up, I've been on the council for 2 years, and what I have seen several times is we would make a decision as a council, and we have a lot of information given to us by the people at City Hall to help us make a decision. And so we make that decision kind of in a vacuum of the information we're given by City Hall. And oftentimes that information then doesn't percolate out to the citizens at large till after we've made a decision, and then they come back sometimes in big numbers to tell us, you got that one all wrong. So the better solution to that is make sure citizens know well in advance on issues that will affect them, what we're planning to do, why we're doing it, and get the response from them before we actually make our decision. Because, I've never been afraid to admit if we make a mistake. My dad always said, if you mess up, fess up. And so that's fine, but I'd rather us, have the input from the citizens, have them know what we're doing. And so I think that we can do a better job of communicating. A lot of that has to do with the media we have here in town, making sure the message gets out to them so that they can spread it to the citizens and the voters and the taxpayers, and they know what's coming up. But I do hope to improve that message and be on the front end of it rather than reacting on the back end when 100 people come to the city council and go, why did you do this?
Transparency is, I think, something that you never achieve, and it's although you're working toward it all the time, I think it's a challenge of all levels of government. As mayor, I will make sure that we over-communicate. I'd like to see more town hall meetings. I'd like to see the mayor do some town hall meetings. I'd also like to see more work sessions. I think work sessions bring attention to certain topics that deserve it, and just to get some good dialogue so that we make good decisions on the council. Well, as I mentioned earlier, I spent quite a bit of time in public education. The voucher system has got to be designed in a way that does not impact public schools as we know it today. They can't be done at their expense. And so as our state legislature works through that, I hope that they keep that in mind. It's a big decision. And at the end of the day, I support public schools. I support those educators that work day in and day out to educate our children. I'm a product of public school, and am proud of that. And I think as a community, we need to make sure they're protected.
Well, of course, the schools are not the purview really of the city government. That's your school board. And I personally am not opposed to vouchers. I would rather it be done on a small scale and just see how the results are. I very much believe in the public school system. My wife was a public school teacher for 29 years. My son and his wife are both school teachers in the public school system. We actually have good public schools here in Lubbock. I don't actually think the voucher system is going to change a whole lot the situation we have here in Lubbock. It may in other cities. My concern always is not where you have a good school district like we have in Lubbock, but in a place, city where you have really a poorly performing school district, to give people the option to have another choice. And, the public has an interest in having, and the state has an interest in having an educated public, but I don't know that it's necessarily the monopoly of the state to educate students. I believe options are good. I want to make sure that our public school system, which fulfills a very important need, is taken care of. But that really is more of a state issue and a school board issue than a city issue. But that's my personal opinion about that. That's, of course, in my campaign, that's been my number one issue. It's the issue I brought up first, is the crime situation. A lot of the crime in Lubbock is gang and drug related. And so the goal was to find a police chief who has experience in dealing with that particular kind of crime. And I think Chief Herman that we've found is someone who does have that experience and has that record. He comes from a city that is in many ways similar to Lubbock, and he comes with a good portfolio. I think he will. One thing I liked about him, we read through the resumes of all these 4 people that our city manager brought to us. His answers were the shortest and most direct of all of them. That tells me a little bit about him. He wants to get to the point. He wants to get results, and that's what we need. I need someone here who hits the ground running and can motivate our police force and lead our police force to get control of the gang and drug-related problem that we have here. And then the other part of that, of course, is making sure that our police officers are paid enough so that we keep them here after we hire them, train them. We don't want to lose them to other cities where they can make more money. So I'm happy to have the endorsement of the Police Association, because they believe I understand what a critical part they are in solving that drug and crime-related problem we've got, a drug and gang-related crime problem we have.
I'm pleased with the city manager's selection for police chief. Chief Herman will start on June 3rd. I think everybody's excited to have him on the job. As I look to Chief Herman as he does his job, I expect a couple things. One is to hold criminals accountable. I've been around the community enough, especially in the campaign, to know that people are frustrated with crime. Second, I hope he works hard to lead our officers, the men and women that work at Lubbock Police Department, and gain their trust, because I think that's key. I think they go holding criminals accountable effectively and leading our officers go hand in hand. And so if there's good morale, I think we'll see good work done on our streets. I would just add to that crime is on the mind of a lot of citizens. Crimes in neighborhoods and crimes in businesses are very frustrating. And a lot of our crime that we see here in Lubbock is gang and drug related. And so I just look forward to his work in those areas, the expertise he's brought from Midland, and look forward to seeing our continued decrease on some of our crime rates. Well, the community policing facility has had an impact. I played a huge role in that, and I'm glad to see that it's making a difference. From a policy perspective, I think the city council could look at a couple of things that would help reinforce the expectation we have with the city manager and the police chief. As mayor, if I'm elected mayor, I would consider looking at some of those things.
Well, our job is to make sure that we do have enough police officers on patrol. And, gang and drug-related crimes are different than a lot of others. They're not the kind of random, domestic violence and things like that you might have. You can't target that, but you do know where the gangs are and how they're operating, who are associated with them. It's one of those things that if you have a very coordinated effort, coordinated between the city, the county, and the federal agents, you can get a control of that problem. And we have to get a control of it. The rates did seem to go down from 22 to 2023, but it seems like some of those rates are going back up. I know the murder rate is going up this year. I mean, I hear the sirens every night, it seems like, and you wake up the next morning and there's a shooting, drive-by shooting, or there's a murder. I think people understand that we've got a problem. And it's not just located in any particular area, it spreads all over our city. And that is access to guns is a big problem. And obviously, I am a big supporter of the Second Amendment. I believe people need to have rights to have their weapons to protect themselves because, as people used to say, when you've got an immediate problem, the police are just minutes away. Sometimes you have to be able to protect yourself. The police are important, but you need to be able to defend yourself. So I'm a supporter of that, but people need to be responsible. I don't know if there's even a way to pass an ordinance for a ticket or citation in some way for having an unlocked car with a gun in it. It's a problem. I'm for responsible gun ownership, and that's not responsible to leave your gun in your vehicle unlocked. But part of it's education. A large part of it is just educating people to that. So we want to keep guns out of the hands of the people who aren't law-abiding citizens, that's for sure.
Sure. PR, continued PR on this. I had a neighbor in my own neighborhood that their vehicle got broken into and their firearm was visible. It's important to take your firearms out of your vehicles. You can't give them a reason to break in. But I think PR is important. I'd like to see, as mayor, I'd like to see some of these neighborhood watch groups reinvigorated that work hand in hand with our police, and I think that could have some effect on this. People that have come before me have done a great job of water in Lubbock. Lubbock is one of the largest cities in the let me rephrase that. Lubbock is one of the largest semi-arid cities in the United States that has the water supply we do. Well, right now our water comes from three sources. The Bailey County well fields, Roberts County well fields, and Allen Henry all have been very successful water supplies. We've always looked at our water supply at 100-year increments in Lubbock, and I think that's important to know. And the work we've done on Lake 7 will complement that. And so, as mayor, I would work to make sure Lake 7 is built and make sure it effectively serves the ratepayers of Lubbock the way it's supposed to, so that we always have plenty of water.
Yeah, and we just concluded, the purchase of the land for our Lake 7, which I'm so excited about. That's not just going to be good for our water situation, but it's going to be an incredible recreational resource for Lubbock, which is something that we need here, I think, and an opportunity for that kind of recreation. Of course, our new Veterans Cemetery is going to be right out there on the edge of it, too. It's going to be a beautiful location for that. We have a good 100-year water plan. Some people don't know that our water conservation program here in Lubbock has been very effective. If you compare our water usage per family or household to Amarillo's, for example, we are way ahead of them on having a much lower use of water. So we have a fairly effective program, to encourage people to continue to, as I did a couple of years ago, take half of my front lawn and xeriscape half of it, to cut down on the water that I use. We want to encourage people to continue to do that. But we do have a good 100-year water supply. Bringing Lake 7 online is going to be a great benefit to us. But it's probably the most critical long-term problem that most people don't think about here in the city that we have to have addressed, because Lubbock is a growing city, and we have to be able to provide a water resource for the people. But we're on top of it. I think we could probably put something together like that. I don't know that this is the right time to do it just now. People are still coming out of some pretty tough economic times. We have spent a lot of ARPA money, which is federal money that came in through the federal government programs related to COVID. That pushed a lot of money into our budget that we were able to use to do a lot of things, some of which are quality of life, the splash pads, for instance. And we've just finished remodeling and fixing to open a new health center here. So a lot of those things we've been able to do with federal money. But as far as tax money from our local citizens, from sales taxes and property taxes, until things improve, I don't want to put something out there and have it fail because the citizens are going, well, I don't want to bear that additional tax increase. I think if we can keep their taxes, the regular taxes they pay, low for an extended period of time, when the economy picks up again, we can, if we come to them with a well-designed bond program, possibly get that passed. I think that's a key to it. We've had 2 road bonds here, one that failed, and then a year later we came back because it was, well, first of all, it was implemented by a citizens committee, and it was more well thought out. And when we came back to the citizens and it presented that need to them a second time, even with more money, they approved it. People are not against making a choice to raise the taxes on themselves if they know that it is for something very particular and they understand what it is and where the money is going to be used and how it's going to benefit them. But I think you need to wait for the timing is very important in that. But I'm certainly not against that. Quality of life is important. It's important for our neighborhoods. And people live in neighborhoods and they want their parks and the amenities they have in their neighborhoods to make that a pleasant place to live. Keeps their home values up, gives their kids a great place to go out and enjoy themselves. And so that's important, very important.
A quality of life bond would be something that you'd have to work closely with the community on. You'd have to make sure there was good support and lots of buy-in before you looked at something like that. What most often comes up, I may jump ahead, but I'm going to go ahead and say it, is pools. I think this is a quality of life issue. We're doing this interview in a week that would have been the first week that normally that city pools would be open. And what I hear from citizens is that pools are a quality of life issue that they want to see. I'm prepared to have that discussion with the community as mayor and determine what that or those facilities look like in the future. It's likely that if the community does want something like that it would require one of those bonds that you're referring to, quality of life, and it would have a tax impact. But if that's what we want as a community, then as mayor, I'd be prepared to lead us to that point. I think it's just controlling the decriminalization of cannabis. I think it was, in my opinion, that's a slippery slope. I think there was a lot of confusion around that. I think some people thought it was legalization, which I don't support either. But you don't have to look at it very long to connect that to criminal activity and gang activity. And so my position was Prop A should have been defeated, and I think that contributes to the public safety of our community.
Well, I think it starts with leadership. We've got good leadership, and that will improve the morale in our forces. And then knowing that they have the backing of their city council does improve that as well. They, 3 years ago, they had mount a campaign to get their pay raise out of a city council. Before I was on it, they'd fallen way behind. in their pay, and they weren't getting. And we were raising taxes all along. That council was raising people's taxes, but the police officers weren't getting the benefit of that, and they'd fallen far behind. So they had to go out and put their money together and walk the streets and get a petition signed to bring it to the council to force a raise, to get a raise. And still, even after they got that raise, they were still pretty far behind. But they shouldn't have to do that. That does affect your morale when it seems like your city council really doesn't understand how critical and how important they are. I mean, that is the most important thing a city does. And if you're not doing it well, you see the evidence of it quickly. And we don't want Lubbock to descend into that kind of a crime-ridden situation that some other cities get into, and the police are the key to it. So I think if they know they have the support of the council, I certainly am going to support them, want to get them up to where their pay is in the top 10, because we're one of the top 10 largest cities in Texas. We should be there with their pay so we don't lose them to Midland and Abilene, where they can go make a whole lot more money at the moment.
I do. I think we've talked about this a lot on the campaign trail. It's no secret where I stood on this. I voted for this in the prior time it came up in city council. This particular project is positioned to be on what's actually vacant land today. And I believe that these projects can be done in a way that's compatible with the neighborhood. They're needed to support the growth of Texas Tech. That's a part of our community that's very walkable, and that project lends itself to that. But again, I think those projects can be done in a way that takes in consideration of the neighbors and the neighboring churches and businesses. I'm not so sure that's the city's role, but maybe the market's role. You know, if someone's not taking care of their business over there, then maybe someone will go do business somewhere else. A project like what was approved on first reading last Tuesday will also change the game a little bit for the market over there. So I think we're going to see, as Texas Tech continues to grow, I think we'll see more and more projects similar to this to accommodate the housing needs of our university.
Well, you know, they asked everybody to stand up who was there, who was against it. I, of course, stood up because I was against it. You know, we had 4 votes against it the first time it came up. We only had 1 vote against it. The second time, I got to give credit to those people for their timing. They timed their coming back before the council when I wasn't there and when Luttrell wasn't there, 2 of the votes against it. They had to have 6 votes this time to get it done because more than 20% of the property owners had opposed it, but they were able to put those 6 votes together. I still was against it, but I will tell you this, if it's going to happen, the guy who's doing it, David Pierce, is going to do a good job with it. I like him. It was a hard vote for me to vote against it because I think he has a very good, he loves Lubbock, he loves tech. I went and visited his facilities in College Station. They're incredible facilities. So I told him afterwards, I said, well, the vote didn't go the way I wanted it to, but given that fact, I said, I'm happy that you're the one that's doing it. And I think he will do a good job. He'll be responsive. But I still think, we may be wrong, but I think there's going to be a problem on Avenue X because of the density of it with all that traffic. But we'll see. We'll see. And maybe this will be the test to see how it affects, because other people are going to want to, I mean, he's not the last one to want to build right across from Tech. So I think we need to wait and see how that plays out before we take too many more steps in that direction. Yeah, a city is always an evolving thing, and there's no such thing as a district or housing development even that over time won't, not be what it was, not be the bright, shining new thing that it was. So that's just a natural evolution in a city. I think what we have to do is make sure that the neighborhood, the quality of life in the neighborhoods stays as equal as possible all across the city. And part of that's dealing with the crime problem. Part of it's dealing with code enforcement. There are other ways that you can work on holding landlords accountable for what they have. It's something I really want to look into, because I have a hard time, enforcing a lot of ordinance control over a widow woman living on a fixed income. Enforcing her to spend a lot of money to keep up her house. But someone who operates it as a business and is making income off of it, I have a little bit different attitude towards, a little bit different expectation of them. But at the moment in our city, you have to treat them all pretty much equally. There may be a way that we can look at a different enforcement mechanism, but that's going to take some looking. And I know there's a lot of opposition to doing anything like that too. So.
Well, I think my priority is always going to be, first and foremost, to provide for our first responders. We have to look at this on a year-by-year basis, and these are the people that care for us or respond to us when we're at our worst. And I want to make sure that we have the best firefighters and policemen, and that requires being vigilant on their compensation. Not only for the region, now it's becoming statewide and even bigger. So first and foremost. At the same time, I would always focus on making sure we have a lower tax rate and do everything we could not to raise the tax rate. But I'm also going to be a mayor that makes sure we provide all the services that citizens expect. And so that can be a grueling process. But I think it's led by the mayor, and the mayor can lead the tone of that discussion, and I look forward to doing that.
Well, oh gosh, what would be my lowest priority? That is a question I have never thought of before. Dadgum, that's a question nobody's asked me. The lowest priority for me is things that are very expensive to maintain that have very little usage. Okay? Now, what fits that category? Different things may fit that category. But because you're taking money out of people's pockets to do certain things, your first priority is safety. Second priority is probably streets and street maintenance. And your basic infrastructure. Your third level priorities are what we call quality of life things. So what I want to look at is what gets the most use and most benefits to the largest number of people for the lowest cost to the city. And those are the things you should try to put your quality of life money towards. Parks are a good example of it. Parks don't cost anybody. Citizens don't pay to use our parks. They're available to everyone. They're available to all ages. We want to have things in the parks that all ages can enjoy and that aren't expensive to maintain, and we don't have to charge people to use. That's where the pools kind of have come into this whole issue. People liked having those pools. I liked having the pools, but they were not maintained for a long time. And then we got into a situation where, we couldn't keep lifeguards. They're an incredible liability issue for a city, and the maintenance costs on them are extremely heavy. And so, you start having to, I know people love them and they want to keep them, but then you have to start looking at, how many people they're only open 2 months out of the year. So is that the best use of a large amount of money taking from your taxpayers that only a few people use and only a few months out of the year? Or is there some other way, like walking trails and play facilities and basketball courts and things that people can use that are not expensive to maintain? So I think that's the decisions we have to make. People are not going to like, anytime you make a decision like that, it affects somebody, whether it's the pools or the libraries or the parks. You want to get rid of the prairie dogs, somebody's going to get upset about that, So you have to be willing to make some tough decisions. But in my mind, I'm looking for something that has the most benefit for the most citizens at the lowest cost to maintain, because that's where you spread your tax dollars out further.
I'd love for us to have a recycling center, and I would love for it to be economically feasible for the city to provide, better recycling services. I think as we look at the economies of that situation, we'll continue to monitor it. If it becomes feasible, I'm fully supportive of it. In the meantime, I think the city needs to make sure that we've got recycling centers that are as close as possible to everybody, and make sure we're accommodating, whatever needs may come from recycling.
So let's take the issue of the trash transfer station. I wanted us to take another look at where we were locating it, but my decision was never based on whether or not we should have one. It's an excellent idea, and our staff did an excellent job at presenting the need for it. And part of that long term was a recycling center. And frankly, they said, one of the problems is at the moment we have to haul our recyclable material so far that it's not cost effective. If we could have a center here, we could recycle and we could draw from other places around to make that one cost effective. So that is in our long-term plans for our trash transfer station, is to have a recycling center there. And it's kind of like the same thing with, I'm very much a conservative person. Being a conservative doesn't mean I don't care about my water, my environment, trash. I hate, people who know me know I absolutely hate seeing, I will not drink water hardly ever out of a plastic bottle. I just, I don't like all that trash. So we have to be able to recycle it. We have to be able to handle that amount of trash. And so I'm very much in favor of us going forward with something like that because it'll help solve a problem that we have right at the moment in our community. I want Lubbock, it used to be and I think you still have it, keep Lubbock beautiful. Lubbock can be quite a beautiful city, and part of it's because we have just such a beautiful sky. And you go out right now, we've had enough rain. You go out and walk the streets, it's just a beautiful place. I tell people, I said, you come the right time of year to Lubbock, you think you died and went to heaven. There's sometimes you think you died and went to hell, but most of the time you think you're in heaven, especially right now in the spring before the dust starts to blow and everything. But I love Lubbock. Lubbock is a great place to live.
That's a pretty broad question. I don't think you get reminded enough that you have to sit back and listen more and talk less. Something I, focus on as I do the job, but sometimes in a campaign you might lose sight of. But just making sure you stay in touch and understand what are on the citizens' minds, and make sure you can take that and convert it to some good work moving the community forward.
I think people in Lubbock are ready. My campaign theme is choice for a new direction. I think people are ready to take a new direction at City Hall. That's the reason I got in the race. I didn't have to, didn't really want to at first. I've served 2 years on the city council. I was planning to fill out my term. And then if I thought I did a good job and people wanted me to stay there, I'd run again. But when Trey decided he wasn't going to run again, I knew Steve would want to run. And of course, I served with Steve, and Steve spent a lot of time serving at the city. But Steve and I are different on a lot of things. We have different priorities and different approaches to things. For the past 2 years I've been on the council, I've never voted for a tax increase on our citizens, and he's been there 8 years, and every tax rate he's ever voted for always increased the taxes on the average citizen. So that's one main difference, but there are others as well. Quality of life in neighborhoods and things like that. Different approaches to how we deal with the crime problem, building a bunch of buildings or paying our police officers an adequate pay. So I made the decision to get in the race so that people would have a choice. I don't like it when not very many people vote in mayor elections, and I think a lot of times that's because, what difference does it make? It's the same people or the same groups that put forward those people and support those people, and there's just, nothing's same, new boss, same as the old boss kind of thing. So I got in it because I felt like citizens wanted a real choice, a real option, somebody to vote for, and that seems to have been proven out in the initial election, and I think it's going to be proven out in the runoff as well. People are ready for a change. And at City Hall, and someone down there who knows they represent the citizens and the taxpayers and not City Hall. And that's what I hope to be, is a voice for the people. And I hope we have a great turnout in this election to show that people finally believe that there's a choice there, and they're happy to have that choice and are going to make that choice. Thank you. You bet.
All right. Very welcome. You bet. Glad to do it. Enjoyed it.